Chapter 1. The Matchmaker's Error. The orbital station never slept. Daniel Cork wove his way through a crowd of species he still couldn't name after 3 years off Earth. Towering insectoids clicking their mandibles, lizard skin traders draped in silks that shimmered like oil, and pale-boned aliens that glided on anti-gravity harnesses. The air smelled of fried kelp, engine grease, and ozone from the shield pylons. Somewhere above, the station's great engines hummed like a heartbeat, steady and inescapable. He tugged the collar of his worn jacket higher. All he wanted was to update his work permit at the registry, grab a meal that wasn't recycled protein paste, and crawl back into the cramped bunk behind the engine shop, where he spent most nights fixing ships no sane pilot would fly. Instead, the clerk at the registry kiosk scanned his item chip, frowned, and then tapped the screen 3 times like it was broken. "That can't be right," the clerk muttered, a species with 3 eyes blinking out of sequence. "You've been matched?" Daniel leaned in. "Matched? What the hell does that mean? I didn't sign up for anything." Before the clerk could explain, the sliding doors hissed open behind him. A hush rolled across the chamber. Even the insectoids paused mid-clack. Daniel turned and froze. She stepped forward with deliberate grace, small compared to the towering aliens around her, yet commanding all their attention. Her skin glowed faintly, patterned with silver lines that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Large violet eyes fixed on him with unsettling certainty. She wore robes of deep indigo threaded with crystal fibers, shimmering like starlight. Daniel's mouth went dry. The alien woman smiled, a gentle curve of lips that carried both warmth and finality. "You've been matched with a wife," she announced, her voice lilting, carrying a resonance that seemed to vibrate in his bones. She tilted her head slightly, the glow in her markings brightening. "And that's me." The registry erupted in murmurs and laughter. A merchant let out a bark that sounded suspiciously like a donkey bray. Someone else whistled. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me." His voice cracked against the smothering silence that followed. The woman took another step closer, folding her hands in front of her. She wasn't taller than his shoulder, but her presence filled the room like a storm cloud. The Syl'kari bonding system is infallible. Once the match is declared, it cannot be undone. By our law, we are husband and wife. Daniel ran a hand down his face. "Look, Lady Lyara, right? This has to be a mistake. I'm a mechanic. I fix broken ships. I can't even keep a cactus alive, let alone..." Her smile widened, luminous and unshakable. "Perhaps that is why the stars chose you. Humans are unpredictable." Something in her tone sent a ripple of unease down his spine. Around them, the station lights flickered once, as if even the machinery leaned in to watch. And Daniel, standing in the middle of the registry with 100 alien eyes on him, realized he had just been bound by a law he didn't understand, into a life he never asked for. Chapter 2. The Bride from the Stars. Daniel's new wife did walk so much as glide, the hem of her robe whispering across the station's metal decking, as if gravity itself made exceptions for her. He followed reluctantly, a step behind, clutching the registry datapad that declared in bold Syl'kari script he couldn't read. Bond confirmed. Her name was Lyara. She introduced herself only once, in that same melodic voice that made him feel like he was overhearing a song instead of words. Lyara of the Syl'kari Dominion. She had said it without pride, more like a confession. Now she led him to the station's residential ring, where neon signs in a dozen languages fought for attention above markets, spilling with spices that smelled of burning sugar and vats of translucent seafood still wriggling. Daniel tried not to stare at her glowing silver markings as they pulsed with each heartbeat. Finally, she stopped before a narrow habitation pod. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the quarters were simple but spacious by station standards. 2 beds pressed against opposite walls, a hollow panel flickering faint blue light. and a dispenser that hummed softly. Daniel stepped in and muttered, "So this is it? Our honeymoon suite." Lyara's eyes widened, her markings flashing faintly. "You mock sacred bonds?" He threw up his hands. "Lady, I didn't ask for this. Where I come from, marriage is a choice. Two people decide to share their lives. Not," he waved the datapad, "whatever this cosmic vending machine says." She tilted her head, studying him as if he were an unusual specimen. Then she sat gracefully on the edge of one bed, smoothing her robes. The Syl'kari do not gamble with matters of the heart. Matches are decided by the resonance, the flow of thought and destiny. It cannot err. Daniel barked a laugh, pacing. "Yeah, well, humans err constantly. It's our specialty. We screw up, we improvise, we fix it. Sometimes badly. Sometimes not at all. And yet, somehow we keep moving." Her expression softened just slightly. "That is why you fascinate us. You build lives out of fragments. You rise when all logic says you should fall." The room went quiet except for the hum of the air recycler. Daniel finally dropped onto the opposite bed, scrubbing his hands through his hair. "Look, Lyara, you don't know me. I'm broke. I live in a workshop that smells like engine coolant. I'm the last guy you want tied to your resonance." She regarded him for a long moment, her violet eyes unreadable. Then she whispered almost too softly, "Perhaps I am not the one who needed choosing." The glow of her markings dimmed as she turned away, leaving Daniel with a knot in his chest he couldn't explain. For the first time since arriving on the station, he wondered if this so-called mistake might be bigger and more dangerous than it looked. Chapter 3, A Rift in the Stars. Whispers followed Daniel everywhere. He heard them in the markets, where vendors hawked glowing fruits that pulsed with bioluminescence, their voices dropping when he passed. He felt the stairs in the docking bays, where plasma torches hissed as mechanics welded hull plates. The humans on station were few, scattered workers like him. None had ever been tied, married, to a Syl'kari. To them, he was a curiosity. To her people, he was an insult. Lyara walked beside him, chin high, her silver markings dimmed as if she was hiding her pulse from the watching crowd. At first, Daniel tried to ignore it. He told himself the stares and mutters would fade. But when they entered the spice market, the tension broke. A group of Syl'kari elders blocked their way, robes trailing, their violet eyes cold as ice fields. One, tall and sharp-faced, spat words Daniel didn't understand. The syllables cracked like glass. Lyara froze, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of her robe. Daniel glanced at her. What's he saying? Her lips pressed into a line. "He calls you unworthy, a stain on our lineage." The tall elder stepped closer, his glow flaring, towering over Daniel with all the weight of centuries. The market quieted. Even the sizzling spice burners seemed to hush. Daniel felt his gut twist. He wanted to back away. He wanted to let Lyara handle it. But then the elder's gaze flicked to her, hard and cruel, and something in Daniel snapped. "Hey!" His voice cracked across the market. Dozens of alien heads turned. "You've got a problem. Take it up with me." Not her. The elder's eyes narrowed. The crowd's murmur swelled, scandalized, like he'd just spat on sacred ground. Daniel could feel Lyara tugging at his sleeve, whispering, "Stop, please." But he shook her off. "I may not know your laws," he continued, heart-pounding. "But where I come from, respect isn't given because of your family name or glowing tattoos. You earn it. And right now, all I see is a bully picking on someone who doesn't deserve it." For a moment, silence. Then the elder hissed something venomous and swept his robe around, disappearing into the crowd. The others followed, their contempt trailing like a bitter perfume. Daniel exhaled hard, adrenaline buzzing. His hands shook. Beside him, Lyara stared, her expression unreadable. Finally, she whispered, "You do not understand what you have done." He gave a weak laugh. "Story of my life." Her markings pulsed once, betraying emotion. Then, in a voice trembling between anger and sorrow, she confessed, "The bond was no accident. Someone wanted me tied to a human, to shame my bloodline, to break me." Daniel froze, the marketplace suddenly spinning around him. Not a glitch, not a mistake, a trap. Chapter 4, Trial by Starlight. The chamber smelled of ozone and polished stone. Daniel stood at the edge of a vast arena, suspended within the hollow heart of the station's central spire. Above him, crystalline panels shimmered with artificial starlight, casting the illusion of a cosmos that stretched forever. Below there was nothing, only an abyss lit faintly by the glow of graviton fields. 100 Syl'kari filled the balconies in silence, their robes fluttering in the recycled air. Their eyes, violet and sharp, judged him as if he were already defeated. Lyara stood apart, her robes darker than usual, her silver markings dimmed with worry. She didn't speak, but her gaze found him through the crowd. Daniel saw the fear there, though her chin remained high. A voice, amplified by the chamber's resonance, announced, "By decree of the elders, the human Daniel Korik shall face the trial by starlight. If he survives, the bond stands. If he fails, it is annulled." Daniel muttered under his breath. No pressure. The floor shifted with a hiss. Sections of the platform floated away, leaving him stranded on a narrow strip of alloy suspended over the abyss. In front of him, translucent drones flared to life, their bodies formed of light and plasma, eyes burning like miniature suns. He had no weapon, no armor, just the sweat prickling his back and the sound of his pulse thudding in his ears. The first drone darted forward, trailing sparks. Instinct screamed at him to dodge, and he flung himself sideways. The drone slammed into the strip, searing metal, before arcing back toward him. Daniel cursed, scrambling to his feet. Okay, think. He remembered long nights in the repair bay, prying open hull plating with tools not meant for the job. Machines broke in predictable ways, even alien ones. When the drone swept low again, he didn't run. He dropped flat, letting it overshoot, and grabbed at the base where its light coalesced into a core. The heat burned his palms, but he yanked with every ounce of strength. The drone spasmed, then blinked out in a crackle of sparks. Gasps rippled through the balconies. Another drone descended, this one splitting into 3 shards of light. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat dripping into his eyes. He didn't fight them head-on. Instead, he timed his steps, using the station's faint hum beneath his boots like a rhythm, letting them chase him until snap, 2 collided, bursting into harmless static. Only one remained. It hovered, almost hesitant, before lunging. Daniel braced, caught its glowing frame against his chest, and hurled himself sideways off the platform. The crowd cried out. Lyara's hand flew to her mouth. At the last instant, Daniel slammed the drone beneath him, using its thrusters to push back toward the ledge. He landed hard, skidding, ribs aching. The drone shattered beneath him in a flash of light. Silence. Then the chamber erupted. Shocked gasps, outraged murmurs. Daniel lay panting on the alloy strip, hair plastered to his forehead, his hands blistered. He dragged himself upright and raised one trembling fist. Still here. Up in the balcony, Lyara's markings blazed bright as starlight, pride breaking through her fear. For the first time, the Syl'kari elders had no choice but to see the human not as a mistake, but as a survivor. Chapter 5, Between Duty and Desire. The arena had emptied hours ago, but Daniel could still feel the heat of the lights on his skin and the ache in his blistered hands. Their shared quarters seemed impossibly small after the vastness of the trial chamber. The faint hum of the recycler filled the silence between them. Lyara sat on her bed, her posture perfect, hands folded in her lap as if carved from stone. Her markings glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat too restrained to break free. Daniel leaned against the wall, wincing as he flexed his burned palms. "So, do I get a medal for not dying, or just a polite thanks for trying?" Lyara did not smile. "You do not understand the weight of what you've done." He barked a laugh, though it came out ragged. "Story of my life. Everyone keeps saying that." Finally, her eyes met his. The violet in them was sharp, but beneath it flickered something vulnerable. "The elders gave me a choice after you triumphed. I may renounce you and restore my honor, or remain with you and lose everything my family has built." Daniel straightened, the words hitting harder than any drone in the arena. "Wait, they told you to choose." "Yes." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "They expected you to fail. Your survival shamed them. Now they demand I undo it." He felt a knot form in his chest. "Then maybe you should. Lyara, you've got heritage, traditions, a family name that means something. I'm just..." He gestured at himself, at the grease-stained jacket and scarred hands. "A guy who keeps other people's ships flying. You don't need to throw your whole life away for a mistake." Her markings flared suddenly, betraying emotion she tried to hide. "Is that what you think you are? A mistake?" Daniel hesitated, mouth dry. He wanted to say yes, but the memory of her face in the crowd during trial, her eyes blazing with pride, clawed at him. Lyara rose, crossing the tiny cabin until she stood a breath away. She was small, but her presence filled the room with gravity. "At first, I believed the bond was manipulation, that I was made a fool. But then you stood in the market. You faced the trial without fear." He snorted. "Without fear?" My knees were shaking so hard I thought they'd rattle off. Her lips curved, the faintest smile. "That is the difference. Syl'kari do not show weakness. We hide until we are empty inside. But you stumble, you bleed, you defy. And somehow you endure. That is not a mistake. Daniel, that is choice." Silence hung between them, heavy and electric. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, anything. But Lyara's hand lifted, her glowing fingers brushing the back of his burned knuckles with startling gentleness. For the first time, the bond between them felt less like a cage and more like a promise. Chapter 6, A Bond Written in Stars. The first explosion shook the habitation ring just after lights out. Daniel bolted upright as the cabin trembled, dust shaking loose from the ceiling. Lyara was already on her feet, markings blazing like molten silver. Her eyes widened. "Assassins!" The door hissed, then sparked, cut open by a plasma blade. Daniel didn't think. He lunged for the only thing at hand, a length of conduit pipe he'd been using to patch the recycler. The hatch blew inward, and 3 figures stormed in, their robes black, faces masked, markings hidden. Syl'kari, but twisted into shadows. One raised a crackling blade of light. Lyara's hand snapped upward, a wave of psychic force slamming the assassin against the wall. The others surged forward. Daniel swung his pipe, catching one square in the jaw. The clang reverberated through his bones, but the figure collapsed with a groan. "Daniel!" Lyara cried. The last assassin spun toward her, blade arcing. Without thinking, Daniel threw himself in the way. The blade grazed his shoulder, heat-searing flesh, but his swing carried through, metal pipes smashing into the attacker's wrist. The blade fell, sizzling against the floor. Lyara's markings flared brilliant white. She unleashed a surge of psychic energy that shook the walls, hurling the assassin backward through the hatch. Silence followed, broken only by Daniel's ragged breathing. He slumped against the wall, clutching his shoulder. You really need to find less exciting house guests. Lyara dropped to her knees beside him, glowing hands hovering above his wound. They sent killers. To erase you. To erase us. Daniel hissed as warmth spread from her palms, dulling the burn. Guess they don't like surprises. Her hands trembled as she healed him, tears shining in her eyes, though her voice remained steady. I could renounce you. I could end this, protect my family, my people. But if I did, she faltered, breath catching, I would lose myself. Daniel reached up, gripping her wrist with his uninjured hand. Then don't. Screw them. Screw their rules. If we're mistaked, then we're our mistake. For a heartbeat, silence. Then her markings pulsed, bright, alive, no longer restrained. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, a gesture both alien and achingly intimate. No, not a mistake. A bond written in stars. Outside, the alarms faded. The assassins were gone, but the choice remained, carved into both of them. Days later, when they boarded a patched-up freighter bound for nowhere in particular, Daniel stood at the viewport, watching the station shrink into the distance. Beside him, Lyara slipped her hand into his, her glow reflecting in the glass. For the first time, the stars didn't feel cold or empty. They felt like home. Together, the freighter's engines thrummed like a heartbeat beneath their feet, steady and alive as it slipped free of the station's gravity well. Beyond the viewport stretched an ocean of stars, endless constellations scattered across black velvet, some known, most nameless. Daniel stood there with his hands braced against the glass, watching the station dwindle to a speck of light. A chapter closing. Lyara stepped beside him, her silver markings glowing faintly in the reflection. The faint pull of artificial gravity swayed her robe, but her eyes were steady, fixed on him. You could still go back, she said softly, though there was no conviction in it. Daniel turned, his shoulders still aching where the assassin's blade had grazed him. Back to what? Fixing broken ships for captains who don't know my name? Pretending I don't care about bonds I never asked for? He shook his head. No, I've already chosen. Lyara's breath caught. Her hand, glowing faintly, slid into his. In the silence of the cabin, her pulse resonated against his skin. Then we choose together, she whispered. The hum of the engines deepened as the stars stretched into lines, the ship leaping into faster than light. For a moment, time seemed suspended, just two souls against infinity. Daniel squeezed her hand, a smile tugging at his lips. Guess the universe finally got something right. Her answering smile lit the cabin brighter than any starlight. Together, they stepped forward, toward whatever future waited, not as accident, not as mistake, but as proof that even in a galaxy of infinite stars, humanity's spark could turn the impossible into destiny.